What up? Mark just clapped. That means we're starting. This is a microphone. I don't know if you can see this. This is my friends on Periscope. To you guys. Before we start talking about fights from Winnipeg, first we're going to talk about Rafael dos Anjos versus Robbie Lawler. I would first like to tell you my very first ever Robin Black Live is happening December 17th in Winnipeg. So if you know anyone in Winnipeg, please share the Facebook event or whatever you can do. I appreciate you. December 17th, it's the day after UFC Winnipeg. Robin Black Live, storytelling, comedy, philosophy, martial arts, life. We're calling it something like that. So it is a 40-minute storytelling with stories about martial arts and fighting and playing in a rock band and stuff, and then an hour of Q&A. So I'm super pumped for that. But let's talk about the UFC in Winnipeg. UFC on Fox in Winnipeg. Over the next couple days, we'll have a couple other fights from it. Ponzinibbio versus Platinum Perry. We'll talk about that fucking madness. And we'll talk about Misha Cirkunov versus Glover Teixeira. Spoiler alert. I think Misha's going to look better than he's ever looked. I really do. All right. Rafael dos Anjos versus Robbie Lawler. Is anyone pumped about this? Like, are you guys feeling this? There are times where people, when I mention Robin Black Live, the thing that moves me and gets me pumped is people go, hey, come to Vancouver, come to the States, come to Dublin. So these are very good signs. Hopefully the show's good. I've been practicing it. People have been digging it, so... But so you got classic guys like this. They're classic guys. Fucking Robbie Lawler. What else you call him? Veteran, you know, a former champion. He's all those things, but he's a fucking classic. You know, it's 17, 18, 19 starts out in the era of, you know, the early era, the pre-Matt Hughes champion era, you know? Tim Sylvia. Those guys all kind of around in that era. Sort of the, not even 2.0 yet, UFC. Was a badass then, knocking people out, took some time off, comes back in the UFC and looks good again. But I don't care who you are. People are asking me about Bisping. They know I'm a huge fan of the man and the fighter. There's a point at which you've done all the fighting you should be doing. I never say, after we see guys get knocked out, often on Sunday or even Saturday night, Twitter lights up. So-and-so should retire. So-and-so needs to retire. Oh, lots and lots and lots of those. I never say that because that ain't my business. You know what I mean? That's a doctor's business. That's their family's business. That's their coach's business. That's their business. It ain't my business. You know, we live in a free country. We live in a free nation. We live in a free society. If you want to work in a mine because you're making great money and you enjoy the camaraderie, but you're developing problems with your mouth and your throat, you have the right to work in a mine. You know what I mean? If you play football and you're starting to see signs of trauma, but the doctor says you can play football, we live in a society in which you can make those informed decisions to do that. So we see Robbie Lawler's and Rafael dos Anjos's who have been through what feels to us like their peak. Doesn't mean it is their peak. There's so much information. We make these knee-jerk reactions. We don't know. Maybe RDA. I mean, we thought Robbie Lawler's peak was fucking the first one of his peaks. Having said that, we're biological animals. There are things that happen to our body when we take head trauma. So these are elements of why you should enjoy these fighters, right? Somebody asked if it's a confirmed #1 contender match. My answer to that, I've got a few questions here from my friends on Periscope. My answer to that is, even when they say it's a confirmed whatever, it's never really a confirmed whatever, so I don't know. But what it is a great fight. It's a great fucking fight. It's a fight where we get to see which guy continues to be able to, and when I say be relevant, I don't mean relevant in standings, I don't mean relevant in selling tickets, that doesn't matter to me as much. I mean relevant in the ever-changing martial arts world. You know, there comes a time where somebody, can you fight Francis Ngannou if you're Big Ben Rothwell, you know what I mean? Can you fight, Overeem on that night couldn't fight him. These guys change. Santiago Ponzinibbio, we'll talk about him in the next couple of days. He's different now. And if you haven't started to upgrade your CPU, You're not able to do it. So which one of these guys is upgrading like that? RDA looked fucking phenomenal against that super tall cat. No, taller than that. No, taller than that. RDA's last fight was against Neil Magny. Yeah, I have a problem with names. So that's why when I say these guys can fight if they want, I have a problem with names and I remembering them. I know exactly what he looks like. I can even tell you what gym he comes from. There are times where I can't remember Rampage Jackson's name, and I'll be, you know that guy, and he goes like this, and he's got the gold chain, he's got the silver chain, and he picks guys up and power bombs them, and he fought in Pride, and I can tell you everything. Smashed his truck, like I just can't make the name work. That's probably from training to fight and fighting, and I'd still want to do it if I could. I'm a little old and crappy, but I'd still like to do it, and that's why I support these guys' rights to make their own decision. A doctor can say, don't fight anymore. I will not license you to fight. The fight organization can say, the doctor seems to think you're okay. You're not fighting for us anymore. People's families can say, please don't do that. But we don't have any influence on them, you know. So Dos Anjos looked phenomenal against Magny. Because there are times, and it's the same thing with Henry Cejudo. I had to inventory that a little bit. Henry Cejudo and Pettis. Cejudo's like, I know how to beat this guy. I have the skills to beat him, and let's go fucking do it. And I love Sergio and Duke and Henry too. Big fan of Henry's. But he did the smart thing, and that's what RDA did with Neil Magny. Ripped him to the ground and dominated him on top. Right? Thank you. I got a very kind comment here. Took him down and dominated him on top. So that looked fucking good on the former 155 pound champ. But Lawler's, way bigger, way stronger, way smarter. And a lot of the time, we used to use the term takedown defense. I don't use that a lot now because it's not super relevant. That means a takedown has begun already. And what that just means is you're wrestling. And the better idea of defending a takedown is not getting somebody to get a hold of you. And that's the modern interpretation of what's happening. We'll talk about that, or we did talk about that in Cub Swanson versus T-City. And we will again on Instagram in our 1 minute breakdown of that coming up. But RDA taking down Lawler. Does anybody see that and go, oh yeah, fucking double leg Lawler to the ground? I mean, Hendricks had a hard time doing it at times, and then he had a hard time keeping him there at times. Round 5 of their first fight was when he really was the last great round for Johnny Hendricks that I remember. I know he's won against Lawler since, but that was the last fucking brilliant round for Johnny Hendricks. It's years back. So now you're left with a guy who's a natural 155er who's probably like 5'8", regardless of the height that they say RDA is. If you've seen him, he's 5'7", 5'8". They might list him at 5'9", they might list him at 5'10". It's like the pro wrestling days, weighing in at 295 pounds. It's like, that's a 210-pound man. Shawn Michaels or whatever, like 300, they just make shit up. You can do the same thing in fighting. You fill out those forms. They don't measure you. They don't come in and measure RDA's height. He fills it out and sends it in. So, you will see a massive size difference. But then again, you saw that with Magny. But there was a route to victory. Off of the grid conversations out there all revolve, and this is what people say. Doesn't mean I'm endorsing it. I'm just telling you what the conversations are out there. And when I tell you that, the conversations out there are what people around fighting are talking about, and they don't have any facts either. And I don't like to pass on gossip. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do it. Fuck it. No, not doing it. Who cares what they say out there? Who cares? Who cares what the gossip is about these two guys? And please don't be mad at me. I didn't mean to do that. This is a free-form, open-end, train of thought style thing that I like to do here on the channel. By the way, this is our channel. I do, and Mark has been doing some stuff with us, stuff over at tsn.ca/UFC. I get hired to do different things on different websites. This one's ours, so we can do it the way we want to. But I apologize for dangling any carrot. It wasn't going to be anything spectacular, trust me. I can't criticize people for passing on gossip and then do it myself. So what we're looking at, much bigger, much taller. I think they're both southpaws, right? RDA fights southpaw. Yeah, a lot of the time. Can you just go to RDA's Wikipedia page? He switches. I'm trying to picture a few of them. I know he's switching off a lot of the time, and I'm picturing a couple of his fights. Like he fought Ben Henderson, and at that time they were both southpaw. Yeah, and then against Eddie, Eddie's landing the 2-3, which is a nice way to land against a sort of a bread and butter southpaw. So you got southpaw versus southpaw, and normally Lawler as a southpaw, he's actually right-handed. Right? So he's a right-handed, 5 or 3 rounds, this is a 5-rounder. And that's a fucking great question, because the question itself is it this or is it this? Sorry, I had 4. Ooh, man, this has got some potent shit in this espresso. Is it this or is it this? That's the question. But the underlying tone of the question is, who's better in that scenario? They've both done their share of 5-rounders. Lawler's done a lot of them, fuckload. Go back and look, Lawler versus Rory, finishing him in 5th. Lawler versus Condit, finishing strong in the 5th. Lawler versus Hendricks, 2, finishing strong in the 5th. Lawler versus Hendricks, 1, not finishing strong in the 5th. Since that day, the day of that, he made the decision that the 5th is where he's going to master it. And he has every single round 5 ever since. Every single round 5 ever since. So that's big. That's big. But we're meandering around this. It's hard. It'd be cool to see the guy, the 155-pounder, go in there and take out Lawler. Of the two, he's the one who performed better recently. Lawler against Cowboy. Lawler, it was a very close fight. Some could have given it to Cowboy, and Lawler looked a little tired. Not just tired as the fight wore on, but looked like a tired fighter. So you can see RDA finding his way if that's so. And it would be cool. I'm a big Robbie Lawler fan. I had a great lunch with him. If you look at my name and his name and Fight Network, you see us sitting down. He's a very cool guy, a very smart guy. So I've always been a fan of his. But it would be cool to see the smaller guy go and take out a former champion at a weight class above. And if he's going to do that, he's either going to land on him in round 1, or it's going to turn out that as we get into round 3, 4, and 5, Lawler, who's been the master of round 5, will look fatigued. But it's a cool one. Southpaw versus southpaw, reach edge for Lawler, size edge for Lawler, always had the edge with the right hand. But it's a different setup because like I said, he's a right-handed southpaw. So he's always had the right hook. It's an interesting one. He's got a powerful right jab too. And because they're both southpaw, that jab will work a little bit easier. So it's tricky. It's a tricky one because there's all the unknowns. I guess this one's a nice one to sort of be able to have the conversation that I always think is really good. I really do. I think it's a hard conversation to have in the short run, but a great conversation to have in the long run about how many unknowns there are in these fights. Unknowns. Nobody knows. You talk to these guys' coaches, they rarely know. You know, they're like, well, he might do this, but, you know, sometimes he's done that, but, hey, he might be injured. Hey, you know, like, what size is he going to come in? I don't know. Like, you ask a coach, you ask the fighter, you ask their team, 10 questions, you get 8 I don't knows. You ask a fan, you ask sort of a hobbyist, you get, oh, man, he's the bigger guy, he's the stronger guy, he does better against southpaws. Like, it's very revealing. It's very fucking revealing. I asked Duke about things. Well, you know, we don't know how this is going to work, but we might do this. And if that does, like, it's all unknowns. All of it. And I think this is a nice fight to illustrate that, you know. Reach is a great thing, but veterans know how to beat it. And especially guys who always are underreached. RDA's had less reach on many of the guys he's beaten. But this is even more reach. How do they do southpaw versus southpaw? Well, Ben Henderson was a southpaw. He did pretty fucking good against him. You know what I mean? Whereas Lawler is a southpaw, and Hendricks often likes to fight southpaw. And those ones he split. You know what I mean? Like, the bigger the sample size, the less information. So I'm sorry that I can't tell you who to bet on with certainty. But I can tell you it's a fascinating fight the deeper you get into it. The more unknowns there are, the more interesting these fights are. Somebody here says, I think Robbie's going to pressure early. Pressure is an interesting thing, though, because if you get pressure too hard as you move forward and you pressure somebody, if you get them moving backwards, it's awesome. But if you pressure them and they move forward, they get a hold of you. And maybe that's what RDA wants. These days, these guys don't really, that game of moving onto one hip and climbing up to attack from a backpack position standing, these guys get really good at it. Not a bad way to attack these guys. But I'm going to wrap this one up. But please watch over the next couple days because we've got a couple more of these. And next week we'll be getting together with Dan Cormier in Winnipeg, John Anik, Duke Rufus, lots of different guys in Winnipeg. And if you can, please pass on to anyone you know in Winnipeg about my show December 17th. Hello from Budo MMA here in Toronto. Come and check us out at Budo Canada on Instagram. And yeah, come back and let's hit up some Platinum Perry versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.